occupy most of your night with this, but I think it's good that we have at least some common data points. And if you look at the experience of Arlington over a long period of time, we've been engaged in thoughtful urban reclamation and retrofit work. If you look at 1970, this was essentially a built-out community, but in a certain one-story quasi-suburban format.
Gotta update that picture.
Yeah, I do actually.
There's no hotel.
And in a lot of the work that we do, we're often asked this juncture between community sustainability, development, and transportation, and can communities support increased economic activity? People want improved environmental performance and quality of life while not being choked with traffic. This continues to be one of the major themes in Northern Virginia. You go out to Fairfax or Loudoun or Prince William. And in Arlington, a lot of the data suggests that we've done many things right, and there are lots of benefits to that. So I'm just going to cover these few things, and I'll try to be expedient in time. Arlington's a very interesting little place. It is a little place, but there's an awful lot here. It's a place that is growing. It's a place where our employees and commercial businesses and developers and residents are all really important and make up Arlington. And our resident population and our employee base continues to grow. These are very old principles, but they continue to hold true. That diagram is from the Arlington room of the Central Library, and it does in fact date back to 1972 with the bullseye concept. And you go back into those old planning documents 40 years ago, and these are the things that are talked about, and they're still very much things that are really core principles today. General land use plan, much of the site plan use permit activities are really concentrated in the two metro corridors, although we also do see some of that activity in Columbia Pike as well. A little bit about development character. I was struck when we had a delegation from PG County that came to visit, and some of the staff remarked, my gosh, you have more commercial development in the Roslyn-Ballston corridor than we have in all of PG County. So think about that. We're 26 square miles. The Roslyn-Ballston corridor is 2 square miles. PG County is in excess of 400 square miles. It's kind of interesting. Our transportation infrastructure is quite diverse. It is, most communities talk about highways and highway capacity. Our infrastructure is far more diverse. We're continuing to work on trying to provide different ways for people to get around. And the users of our transportation system are equally diverse. We have over 212,000 residents, many of whom don't work here. They live here but they're commuting elsewhere. And we are a net importer of workers every day. Right now it's a little bit over 160,000 people are coming in. And they're part of our community. And then you overlay that, many, many visitors. We have Northern Virginia's largest supply of hotel rooms. Our systems are heavily used. Just a couple of data points. The walking trips is, I think, now well over 250,000. Bike sharing is the latest addition to our travel options. Car sharing continues to do well, and there's a tremendous amount of innovation here that we are investigating. And our transportation strategies over time are very much married with our land use strategies. And the top one is, that concentrating the mixed use neighborhoods on top of transit. And that has served the county very well. But you see that item, we've done a lot of work in some of the upper bullets, and really taken those to another level. But parking is a really key part of this equation. It's where the development and the transportation system are really tied together. Just some of the ways that we do it. We're probably one of the most advanced in the country on commuter services, building-specific services. At this juncture, almost all of the major employers, and I think in excess of 160,000 employees are part of Arlington Transportation Partners. Every hotel, most of our multifamily properties. And this for us has been a laboratory for expanding travel options. So it was really, we gave birth to Bike Arlington, Walk Arlington, car sharing, dynamic ride share, which is what we're working on right now, and trying to use the internet and communication tools to pair people up to better use their private vehicles. Every site plan that comes through the pipeline has a building-specific TDM to really manage travel demand. And then the focus of our conversation, parking, and it's a two-part equation. We have the part that's on-street, that is mostly county-owned and managed. We have in excess of 100,000 on-street spaces, of which about 5,200 are metered. But then there's a very large parking supply that is provided as part of our site plan process. Residential buildings, office buildings, retail facilities. And this is where these discussions come in. How do you provide information about that parking? Can the parking be shared? What's the pricing of that parking? How much? Core of the discussion.
Dennis,
Yep.
do you happen to know an estimated amount of off-street parking spaces in Arlington?
I don't think I could guess right now, but it's an easy number that
Oh, you talked about the 100,000 on-street.
It's about 110,000 on-street spaces, as I recall.
It'd be
Yeah.
interesting to know just the scale, both for residential, single-family homes and their garages, as well as commercial.
That's hard. That's
Yeah,
harder.
The easiest,
Site plans, but-
we can probably provide this group a number for site plan and use permit development, because it's something that
that's-
we track all the way back to the late
that's
'60s.
Right?
And it's sizable.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah.
The Metro Corridor is built on a sea of below-grade structured parking.
Right.
What did you,
Yeah.
how much office square footage did you say we had?
Including the Pentagon, we have about 44 million square feet. Excluding the Pentagon, it's about 39.
So for 39, it's probably on average somewhere close to 1 per thousand.
No.
Oh, it's more.
It's much more than that.
Much more.
Much more than that?
Because I
Yeah.
think there's close to 30,000 spaces just in Miles.
Yeah, the older,
We're
you have
parking
the older
500.
by right office buildings
Yeah.
had much more parking.
The
They
old
were
standard
parked
was
at
1 to 250.
1 to 300, yes. And then I'm just gonna briefly share a couple of performance indicators. Just to position Arlington in the marketplace, this is actually, needs to be updated. It excludes DOD-owned space. But you can see that Arlington actually is one of the larger office markets and is actually larger than some major CBDs. We don't often think of it as such.
Those are the rental rates? I've never understood what $38 meant. Is that per square foot per month?
Per year.
Per year.
Per year, and there are different ways to calculate it depending on what's in the rent. This was an AED study done in 2011, looking at retail per square foot sales. Arlington does quite well on a retail sales. This is where the mixed use and the density really comes in.
But that's also per year, that's.
Per
square foot.
Square foot per year. And then you can see our mixed-use districts really provide a substantial portion of the county's real estate tax base. So the 2 metro corridors alone are about 4,800 percent of all of the real estate value in the county. And you can see the split, in Roslyn Ballston, pretty balanced between commercial value and residential, and then Jefferson Davis Carter much more heavily skewed, towards commercial real estate.
So Dennis, are those values or the amount of taxes paid?
This is assessed values by sub-area, that's the first top chart.
Okay, and then
the taxes levied, by sub-area.
got it.
From the bottom.
So the percentages should be the same since we tax it the same.
Right.
We actually don't
We
anymore.
don't, yeah.
There is, what's not included in here is a 12.5 cent, commercial industrial real estate tax for transportation infrastructure. So retail property, commercial office, and, hotel fall into that category.
And I guess are maybe that's the bid surcharges aren't in there as well? Because I
The
know
big
like-
surcharges are not in there as well.
Okay,
Because the business sector is such a large, element of our community, we continue, to conduct surveys to get feedback in terms of how they think we're doing with transportation infrastructure and services. And, in our last survey, and we're just about to roll out the update, and I'm told that the numbers are pretty consistent. Was that in this 2007 survey, 87% of business leaders said Arlington was a good place to do business, and 40% that said transportation access was their number one reason. And we're just finalizing the compilation of the update of this study. So I've gotten a very top level report, but haven't been able to translate it into a new slide yet. And then here are all the reasons. And then we also continue to survey Arlington residents. This was a pretty large survey of over 4,000 respondents. Basically over 90% gave Arlington a 4 or 5, a good or excellent rating for quality of life. And then in this region, this was actually a very striking statistic, 3/4 were satisfied with Arlington's transportation system. We also collect data on how people get to work, and this matters. This is very important for this topic that we're discussing. Again, we're in the process of updating this study as well, but you can see transit plays a major role in how people get to jobs in our metro
DA drive
corridors.
alone,
Mhm.
I'm sorry?
DA,
Drive alone, yes.
And that's for people living in each of those areas or working?
This is
Office workers.
This is office workers, regardless of residence.
Going to those areas.
And this is again, 2007, 2008 survey.
Right, but again, we do these surveys on 4 to 5 year cycles, so we're also coming into a refresher of this as well. And all indications are that the transit percentages have gone up a bit. Then we also collect detailed data on households to find out how they travel, and we're finding that our households really are making less use of single occupant vehicles for their trip making than many other places in the region, with Pentagon City and Crystal City being a real standout. It has a drive share that's even lower than the District of Columbia. We also track traffic, and parking and traffic have a relationship, particularly for office workers. But you can see, this is, and for many people, this is very counterintuitive, that on many of the arterials where we've actually added the most density are the places where traffic has actually started to drop over time.
Well, by your traffic there, you mean
Vehicle throughput.
Vehicle throughput, yes.
Some people use the word traffic to mean congestion,
How long I have to sit in.
and there may be more congestion.
Yes.
But, and in fact, congestion often means less, not more throughput. Right?
But not always.
So traffic here means just throughput.
Yeah, it is, yes,
Adding vehicle throughput, not person.
person throughput.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Oh, it is.
But we track other things too, because we're trying to get at, with increased office population, increased resident population, we are accommodating more trip making. And one of the things we found is a lot of that trip making has been absorbed by the transit system. We've had a little bit of a dip because of the recession and the decline in employment in the district. But we're now seeing it begin to trend back up again.
Our bus, look at them, a little transit system that could.
I think in 96,
What's that?
we had art in 96.
We did, it was just a circulator in Crystal City. It was one route.
One guy riding constantly.
I know.
But our population and employment base has been growing at about 1% per year. So to see a 2% transit increase year after year over a long period of time is pretty remarkable. And it's also part of this picture of getting the parking right. The environment isn't static.
I'm sorry, I asked you a detailed question, never mind.
Okay. And then this is just some more, just a chart showing what's happened with art, where we've seen a tremendous increase in the use of that system. And then we're also trying to get at, a lot of trip making is being absorbed through just walking and biking. And historically, we have not had good ways to capture that. And actually, for retailers, that becomes a relevant thing. How much foot traffic is going in front of your building? So we are now in about year 3 of a large-scale deployment of automated counters. I think we now have 24 automated counters deployed, and we're adding 12 to 14 every year. And what we're finding that our trails and sidewalk segments actually carry more traffic, if you think about people throughput, than many of our residential streets. That's kind of an interesting sort of bit of data to realize, say, that the Custis Trail ranks higher on people throughput than the majority of streets in Arlington that are mostly in the single-family residential neighborhoods.
Do these numbers include you do in-person counting as well for bikes and pedestrians as well, right?
We actually count, we count bike, ped, and combined. This is just segregated out to, at that time, the counters that we had. But again,
I'm sorry, I'm asking, like, are these just from the automatic counters, or like, I participated in bike and walk counts?
This is
where
just from
you
automated.
sit at a metro station and just count the amount of people who
Yeah.
go by, okay, so just the automated.
so just the punchline for what we're learning from all of this information is that there's a synergy of these different strategies being used together, and they are yielding some pretty powerful results. And I would say for this group, this is important in pushing this one policy area forward, which in some ways has been kind of a lagging area for us. I think we've done a lot of work expanding travel choice. We've got more to do. But getting the parking right, I think we as staff, it's been hard. So I think this is a piece of the puzzle that really needs some of this attention. Because our districts are continuing to change, the mix of travel options is changing, and we want to make sure that these buildings and neighborhoods are sustainable. So that brings us back on topic. But I wanted to give the group some basic trends and data points that hopefully you'll find helpful as we deliberate
And you'll keep
this.
them around during the meetings in case we need to do a ready reference.
Absolutely.
Just
We'll post this on the website so you guys can
In fact, I just
have access to the minutes.
videoed it so you can watch it in the next couple of days, as often as you
And
want.
there are
All
50
Dennis,
and
all the time.
70 slide versions.
Would
Yeah.
you make the longer version available? Because I've seen some of that other stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I have, what I ended up cutting out of this particular one was really a much more detailed dive into specific